2023 Charter Review Committee meeting of October 17, 2023. This meeting will be recorded.
Recording in progress.
The Zoom application will notify you that this meeting is being recorded. Please press continue on the Zoom application to stay in the meeting. Use the raise your hand feature in Zoom when you would like to speak on an item and to also lower your hand when you're finished speaking. Please unmute when called to speak and mute yourself when you are done speaking. If you're calling in by phone, identify yourself by name before speaking on an item. Press star 9 on your phone to raise and lower your hand. Press star 6 if you are participating by phone to unmute. Can I get a roll call, please?
Member Davis?
Here.
Member Chandra?
Yeah.
Vice Chair Patel?
Here.
Member Coulterman?
Here.
Member Nguyen?
Here.
Chair Houston?
Here.
Member Sini?
Here.
Welcome to the final 2023 Charter Review Committee meeting. Meeting agendas are posted to the city's meeting page in advance of the meeting. Presentations will be available on the city's meeting page as post-agenda materials at www.santaclara.legistar.com. We will now move to the public presentations section of our meeting. This part of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the 2023 Charter Review Committee on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the committee. The law does not permit action on or extended discussion of any item not on the agenda except under special circumstances. The committee or staff may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed, and the committee may request staff to report back at a subsequent meeting. As a reminder, comments can be emailed to charterreview2023@santaclaraca.gov. If any member of the public would like to make comments, please fill out a speaker card or raise your hand in Zoom. To accommodate all speakers, we request that you complete your comments within 3 minutes. Staff, do we have any members of the public that would like to speak?
No.
Okay, thank you. We will now move to the general business items on the agenda. Our first item is action on the minutes of the September 14th, 2023 Charter Review Committee meeting. Does anyone on the committee have any questions or corrections to the minutes? If not, can I get a motion to approve? If there are no questions, can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion to approve by Member Coulterman and second by Member Nguyen. The next item on the agenda is action on the minutes of the September 21, 2023 Charter
Chair?
Review Committee.
We need a vote.
Oh, sorry. Roll call, please.
Member Davis?
Yes.
Member Sini?
Yes.
Chair Houston?
Yes.
Member Nguyen?
Check. Here.
Member Coulterman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Patel?
Yes.
Member Chandra?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is action on the minutes of the September 21, 2023 Charter Review Committee meeting. Does anyone on the committee have any questions or corrections to the minutes? If there are none, can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion to approve by Member Coulterman and second by Member Nguyen. Roll call, please.
Member Davis?
Yes.
Member Sini? Chair Houston?
Yes.
Member Nguyen?
Yes.
Member Coulterman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Patel?
Yes.
Member Chandra?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Our next item is discussion and action on recommendations to the City Council regarding proposed charter amendments for the Chief of Police and City Clerk positions. From a process perspective, Assistant City Manager Bojorquez will provide an overview of how we will proceed on this item. Then we will hear from committee members and the public on any questions they may have regarding this process. After that, we will proceed with the process as outlined. Assistant City Manager Bojorquez, please proceed when you are ready.
Thank you, Chair. Can I get the presentation, please? Great. Okay, so this item is to provide the committee with an overview of the community survey results. Next slide, please. Just by way of background, let's start with some background on the survey. The city routinely uses Open City Hall online platform to administer surveys and collect results. In accordance with the Charter Review Committee's direction to have the survey open for at least 4 and up to 6 weeks, this particular community survey was open from September 7th through October 12th. The survey had 2 goals: to provide a mechanism for engaging and soliciting input from the community, and 2, to create awareness of potential policy changes. As you will hear, we believe both goals were accomplished. Next slide. Part of the charge of the committee was to ensure robust community engagement. As noted on this slide, a variety of communication tools, including the online survey, was made available. A postcard announcing the survey was mailed to over 30,000 registered voters in Santa Clara. The survey itself was posted online for 6 weeks. The city's social media channels were used to encourage participation, and 3 separate Gov delivery emails were sent to approximately 30,000 e-news subscribers. The survey was also promoted via City Hall News. Recognizing that not all residents are comfortable with technology, hard copies of the survey were made available at all 3 library sites, the Senior Center, and City Hall. Finally, each member of the Charter Review Committee was provided with both hard and soft copies of the survey instrument. Next slide, please. Before we get into the results, we want to start with a common understanding of some key definitions. The first is, what is a registered user? This is someone who is registered for an account. During the registration, they provided a first and last name, a physical address, and a verifiable email address. What is an unregistered user? This is someone who posts a statement without signing in or posts a response, but has yet to verify their email address or agree to the portal terms of use. What is a registered response? A response is a response from a registered user. What is an unregistered user response? Statements from an unregistered user. Next slide, please. Now let's talk about some parameters or considerations to keep in mind as we look at the survey results. The first and most important is that in order to maximize participation, registration was not required. Too often, people are reluctant to cast their vote in public simply choose not to participate. As this survey was intended to get a pulse of the community to hear reasons why they would support a change or not, the decision was made to cast a wide net and not require registration. The second consideration is that the number of responses is statistically small, given that there are over 30,000 registered voters in the city of Santa Clara. As such, the survey is just one mechanism for input. The survey was not limited to residents or likely voters, again with the mindset that the intent was to solicit maximum input from the community. The survey is simply another engagement tool intended to complement the public forums, expert presentations, and best practice research the committee has received in order to facilitate the decision-making process. Finally, because respondents have chosen to remain anonymous, there is no way to prevent multiple responses from unregistered users. Next slide, please. In summary, there were 243 registered users who provided their name and contact information. There were 5,493 responses from unregistered users, again, individuals who chose to remain anonymous. And finally, we received 4 responses for unregistered users who all expressed their support for an elected chief of police. Next slide. At this point, we're going to share and focus on the results from the registered users first. Next slide. As noted on this slide, of the 243 registered users, 159, or 66%, stated that the city clerk position should remain elected, with 30.3% expressing support for an appointed city clerk. Of those who supported a change, 20.3% or 37 users indicated the appointing authority should be the city manager, while 14.8 or 27 indicated support for a city council to serve as the appointing authority. Next slide. We're going to go over the responses for registered users for the chief of police. Next slide. Of the 243 registered responses, 175, 72% indicated the position of chief of police should remain elected, while 63 or 25.9% expressed support for a change to an appointed position, and 2.1% respondents indicated they were undecided. For those who favored an appointed chief, there was a slight preference that the city manager be the appointing authority at 18.3% versus 15.4%. Next slide. At this point, I'm going to shift over to the unregistered users and start with the city clerk. Next slide, please. Unregistered users overwhelmingly expressed support for an appointed city clerk, with 93.4% in favor of a change from elected to appointed. They also overwhelmingly expressed support for the city manager to be the appointing authority, with 94.6% in favor. For your information, 99.69%, or 2,742 of the 2,754 unregistered users who responded to the resident question indicated that they were City of Santa Clara residents. Next slide. Now I'm going to shift over to the responses from the unregistered users for the chief of police. Next slide. Unregistered users overwhelmingly indicated support for an appointed chief of police, with 93% in favor of a change. Unregistered users overwhelmingly expressed their support for the city manager to be the appointing authority. 2,742 of the 2,754, 99.69% unregistered responses indicated that they were residents of the city of Santa Clara. On the next 4 slides, we have summarized the main reasons why respondents indicated their support for a particular position. The information on these slides is not verbatim from the slides, but are a reflection of the sentiment expressed. For the sake of transparency, the full results will be posted tomorrow and included in the full report to the City Council. We believe the summaries capture the comments appropriately. However, if a community member objects, please feel free to reach out to staff, and we will work to make a correction in the final report. Next slide. So these are the reasons for an appointed city clerk. The first, attract the most qualified pool of individuals to perform the work. Number 2, duties require professional competency, training, and experience. Number 3 is an administrative position should be appointed and evaluated by the city manager. Number 4, there would be fewer items to take to the voters and would save in election costs. Number 5, the current practice of a part-time position is not sufficient. The position should be full-time. Number 6, allows for regular evaluation of performance and clear metrics for success. Number 7, facilitates timely removal for subpar performance when action is needed. Number 8, position should be isolated from politics, outside influence. An elected position requires running for office. Number 9, an appointed position would allow for enhanced working relationship with the city manager. And number 10, city manager council are more familiar with the day-to-day requirements of the job. Next slide. Reasons for an elected city clerk. The voters should make the decision. Number 2, there is a lack of trust in the appointed model due to concerns regarding the current political climate. Number 3, current system works well. There is a system of checks and balances. Number 4, we should retain the elected city clerk, but qualifications should be added. And then number 5, residency requirements should be eliminated. Number 6, elected clerk is more inclined to keep the best interests of the public in mind. Number 7, the clerk should be independent. Position needs to be free from political pressure. Elected city clerk process is more transparent. An elected position should return to the full-time position with full responsibilities. And the reason for an elected city clerk is that the issue of an appointed would be a waste of public funds. The next slide, please, is the reasons for an appointed chief of police. The first reason, attract the most qualified pool of individuals to perform the work. Number 2, selection should be based on professional experience, education, and core competency, not residency. Number 3, chief should be responsible for a full range of department head responsibilities. Number 4, the chief should focus on fighting crime, not running for office. The current environment is too political. Number 5, would allow workforce to have a say in hiring and recruitment. And by workforce, they meant the police department workforce. Number 6, allows for regular evaluation of performance with clear metrics for success and ongoing accountability. Number 7, facilitates timely removal for subpar performance when action is needed. Number 8, position should be isolated from politics, outside influence. Elected position requires running for office. Number 9, residency requirements of elected should not determine incompetency to lead professional workforce. Only one candidate does not provide voters with a real choice. And number 10, political affiliations have clouded judgment. The next slide are the reasons for an elected chief of police. Voters should make the decision. There's a lack of trust in the appointed model due to the concerns regarding current political climate. The current system works well with checks and balances, and it makes Santa Clara unique. Qualifications should be added. Residency requirements should be eliminated. The elected chief, more inclined to keep best interests of the public in mind, builds rapport with Santa Clara Police Department and the community. The chief should be independent. The position needs to be free from political pressure and outside influence. The elected chief process is more transparent. The chief position should be responsible for a full range of department responsibilities. And number 10, it's a waste of public funds. At this point, we'd like to share some thoughts with the committee. Can I get the next slide, please? First, we believe the strategy created engagement in the process and provided valuable insight into the reasons for support and opposition of each alternative. Second, the survey provided a vehicle for multiple opportunities to educate the public that a potential change to the charter is under consideration. Third, the 243 registered responses likely reflects that 243 separate individuals completed the survey with a substantial amount of registered users in support of maintaining the elected positions. Fourth, the unusually large number of unregistered responses and the timing of submissions indicates that more likely than not, multiple submissions were submitted from one or more respondents. As such, it is important to keep that in mind when looking at the final survey results. Next slide. As you can see, the results related to an elected versus appointed positions varied greatly depending on whether the user was registered or unregistered. As shown in this chart, registered users overwhelmingly supported maintaining the elected position of city clerk and city chief of police. However, unregistered users overwhelmingly favored appointed position of city clerk and chief of police. While these numbers are in stark contrast, it is important to remember that individuals who chose to remain unregistered did so for a reason. Moreover, because there is no way to prevent multiple submission from unregistered users, there is a greater likelihood that unregistered users submitted multiple responses. Next slide. In terms of next steps, the committee should review and discuss all of the community input that has been received and take final action on its recommendations. This should include making determination as to the role the committee wishes to play in terms of presenting its recommendations to the City Council. As we did at the last meeting, staff will facilitate a final voting process. For the record, final recommendations of the committee will be presented at the November 7, 2023 City Council meeting. Next slide, please. That leads us to the recommendation for this item. The recommendation is the committee provide feedback and direction to staff regarding the following items: draft ballot measure language for the city clerk position, draft ballot measure language for the chief of police, recommendations for the appointing authority for each position, other recommendations related to the committee's work and study. In your report, there was draft ballot language included, and let me pull that up. In the memo, we provided information from 3 other cities in Santa Clara that have recently passed ballot measures that provided for a city clerk. And I'm sorry, for those who are following, I'm looking at RTC 23-1240, where it says draft ballot measure language. Since 2008, 3 cities in Santa Clara County have passed ballot measures that provided for an appointed city clerk. The town of Los Gatos, which passed Measure C in 2008, the city of Campbell, which passed Measure O in 2010, the city of Morgan Hill, which passed Measure J in 2018. Each of those, the ballot language would say the office of city clerk be appointed. It is important to remember that we are a charter city, and so we are recommending that a slightly modified version of the ballot language be considered as follows. Shall an amendment to the charter providing that the city's city clerk position be appointed by the city manager be adopted? And 2, shall an amendment to the charter providing that the city's chief of police position be appointed by the city manager be adopted? What we are also recommending is that In order to avoid confusion at a later date regarding the appointing authority issue, a red line of the proposed charter amendment that includes a provision that the city manager be the appropriate appointing authority be to include in the proposed ballot measure materials. What a red line is a document that shows where the changes are, and so we're recommending that that go forward as part of the ballot measure language as well. So at this point, again, we are looking for the committee to take the recommended actions as noted on the slide and provide feedback to the staff. First, I think we should take questions on the presentation, and then we'll go to the voting. That completes my report.
Do any committee members have questions for Assistant City Manager Bojorquez? Member Chandra?
Thank you. So the unregistered voters, right, I mean, say it's more than, I would say, 2,000% or so, compared to 243, 5,500, right? So there was no way that you can at least validate whether they are from the city? I mean, say Santa Clara zip code or anything?
Yes, so for there's about 2,700 that validated their zip code for the unregistered responses. So yes, we do have that information.
So they fall in under the Santa Clara city then?
Correct. They provided a zip code, a Santa Clara zip code.
And how about the names? First name, last name? No.
The unregistered voters do not provide first name, last name. They do not provide any information. They just respond to the questions.
They respond to questions. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Member Sini?
Thank you. I wanted to know if the system has any system to detect a robot.
So it does appear that we cannot validate because we do not have access to the IP addresses. So we cannot validate whether it's an individual who provided multiple responses or whether it was a bot. But it does appear that there were multiple responses submitted from unregistered users.
So the survey was open for 1 week with no information other than this committee knowing about it. And at that 1 week interim, 2,500 unregistered responses hit here. So how would the system, how would anybody know that that survey was out there since there had been no information regarding that distributed by the city?
Actually, as soon as we put it up, we sent out notices that the survey was available. We posted it on our website. We sent out e-govs. We sent out information that the survey was available as soon as we made it available to everyone. So when you had it, it was.
But the 30,000 emails and all of that didn't happen until later.
Correct.
Or
But
not emails, but the postage that was sent out.
the postcards, the 30,000 postcards were sent later. However, it was, as I mentioned, sent out to the 30,000 e-news subscribers. It was on our website for multiple weeks. We sent out social media posts. All of that information was made available at the start of the survey.
I'm saying that in the first 7 days, there were 2,500 responses. Because the system was open. So people could see it.
I'm sorry, I'm still not understanding. So if they chose to be unregistered, you still would not be able to tell. They did not have to register when the system was
I
open.
understand that. I'm just trying to understand how 2,500 people were able to respond to the survey in the first 7 days of it going live on the system.
It wasn't 2,500 people, there's 2,500 responses.
Thank you. So that's a really good point.
Correct.
So 2,500, so we have 5,000. Yeah.
The total was 5493.
5493 that were added. So another, to the 2,500, it doubled.
Correct.
Okay. So in the first 5 days, it was one set of numbers, and then in the rest of the period, from the second week until the closing date of October 12th, you added the same amount of people to the survey. Or not people.
Again, it's not
but
people, it's responses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
unregistered responses.
Registered responses.
Yes. So that was actually, when you see the documents tomorrow, we will be posting them, you'll be able to see the number of repeat and how the likelihood that it is multiple responses from an individual or a bot. You'll see it. It's pretty clear.
Okay, I'm just wondering I'm wondering about the reliability and, how much weight to put on this information it feels like data, not information at this point to me.
It's a very valid concern, right? We do not have the ability to validate the addresses, and so it could very well be one individual who submitted multiple responses. So I would caution, and I think I did in the report, caution all of you to take the unregistered information with a grain of salt, and then have more reliability on the ones that were registered users. But again, the registered users is a very small sample. 243 is very small when you're thinking about 30,000 registered voters.
And there were a little over 100 people that responded in the first week that the survey was up. And so in the rest of the period of all the work that was done for outreach, we added another 100 and what was the total number of registered people?
243.
243, okay. Thank you.
So how many responses you think are questionable? 2,500? 5,000?
When we looked at it, we think that about the 5,900 comes down to about 500 separate responses, we think. But again, we don't have the ability to validate that. It just looks like there's repeat responses.
Okay, thank you.
And I have one more question about the registered users. Are the registered users, when you said that some of them give their names and those the staff is allowed to have, of the 243 registered users, how many of those does staff know are citizens of the city of Santa Clara?
I believe when I looked at it, all of them but 4 were from inside Santa Clara. But we need to pull up the information.
And when you say that, is that because they self-identified that they were, or that
Correct.
or that you,
Correct.
but you didn't validate that they were?
We do not have the ability to validate.
Okay. So there's no way to really know, other than what the person who filled the form out said is.
Correct. It is a self-validating survey.
And there's nothing to keep someone from registering twice
Correct.
if they live in a neighborhood or own a couple of houses or something like that.
They would have had to have used multiple addresses, right, to do so. But yes, they could have. In the OpenGov says that they do try and attempt to identify multiple registered users and address that issue. So it's not likely that it happens, but they could use different addresses and different names. And
this is Silicon Valley.
yeah. So we have to trust that people are trying to provide information to the best of their ability, and there's not really any way if somebody wants to game the system, they can, right?
Thank you.
Member Davis?
Yes, thank you for all of that. That brings me to one of the problems that I had originally thought about having the poster and reaching out to people, the flyer. And so I did with my neighborhood people a little bit. And one of the first things they said was, how are they going to validate this? I can submit a lot of them. And I think, unfortunately, that lends to the climate of mistrust and not trust going on. And so it made it very, very difficult to have the conversation. And then when I look and I see that with the hard copies, I'm sure you put them in multiple places, but only 4 respondents of hard copy.
Correct.
There are a lot of words I could use, but I'll just stick with probably unfortunate and alarming that people don't feel safe in expressing how they feel about something as this, and then the mistrust and then the skewing of it just kind of lended to it. So tonight, for the people who are watching from my area, sorry, and you were right.
Any other questions from the committee? I have a couple questions. On slide 15, reasons for elected city clerk, can you provide more detail on number 3, number 6, and number 8? The statements on their own don't say a whole lot unless there's more explanation. For example, current system works well, and then checks and balances. You know, what are those checks and balances? And then 6 would be elected clerk more inclined to keep best interest of the public in mind. Does that mean an appointed clerk would not do that? I think if I were an appointed clerk, I'd take offense. So if you could give some detail to that number 6, why is that a true statement? And then number 8, elected clerk process is more transparent. Again, how is it more transparent?
So these are comments that were provided on the survey themselves. So all I have is the text that's here. I don't have any other further explanation than what's been provided here.
Thank you. The ballot statements. So there will be 2 separate ballot statements, right?
Correct.
Okay, because on our agenda packet for 23-1240 on page 2, where you have the proposed ballot statements, the first one for city clerk ends with the word "and," implying that the second one, that the 2 are connected. So could we remove that word "and"?
Yeah, that was just for the purpose of the memo, not
Okay.
for the purpose of putting on the ballot.
And are you sure that's all? Should we use the word providing? Shall an amendment to the charter providing that the city's clerk position be appointed? Wouldn't it be simply provide, or is it providing? And am I getting too much into the weeds here? I mean, because by the time this gets to the council, they may have thoughts as well, and so maybe this is good enough to give to the council and let them figure this out.
That is accurate. I'm going to defer to the city attorney because they will end up approving the final ballot
Well,
language.
so I'll stay out of the weeds then, and I'll finish with, those are all the questions I have. Are there any other questions from the committee?
Yes.
Member Nassini?
And I didn't know we're off the survey and on to the wording. I have an issue with the red line, because red line is like a error or something like that. Is it possible to have it just be bolded? If all you're trying to do is to highlight that information rather than having it be redlined? Or is there?
No.
Is it some standard that is
Yeah,
used?
redline's a funny term. I don't believe the ballot itself actually shows it in red. The concept of redlining, it's really a black line. It will show words that are deleted, and it'll show by those words being crossed out, and it'll show the words that are added by those words being underlined. I don't think it's red. It's a term.
It's just a term.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Member Colsterman?
So for both of these statements, so I'm looking at on page 2 of 3 with the proposed ballot statements, the shall an amendment to the charter and then be adopted, there's a huge number of words in between there, and I think it makes it difficult to read and difficult to understand. And I would like the be adopted to be moved to have it be shall an amendment to the charter be adopted, which provides that the city clerk position be appointed by the city manager. I just don't like the disconnect. I think it's hard, it's going to make it harder for people to understand the statement.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner, first of all, I couldn't agree with you more. Second of all, unfortunately, this particular awkward grammatical structure is required by state law.
Any other questions from the committee? Member Chandra?
Yeah, so the multiple responses you are saying, can we dig into it and get back to us? Like how many multiple responses? By tomorrow, you said you'll have more clarity on that data?
So you'll be able to see the data for yourselves. So we're going to provide that to everyone.
So how are you validating that there are multiple, a person has entered a multiple, are you trying to find a unique way of IP address or somewhere, or how are you determining that?
So we're going to show you an example of what we found. This is not intended to
No, that would
this
be
is just
helpful.
intended to give you, you'll get a sense when you see the
Yeah.
data.
That would be
I'm
helpful.
going to put it up. Make that bigger. This is part of the reason we didn't want to put it on the screen because it's going to be hard to see. Yeah. So if you look at the date timestamp, you'll see that they're right after another, right? And you'll see that it's the same responses right after another. So we see this repeatedly in the unregistered respondents, and so that was our first clue that there may be something going on there.
That's a good catch.
Member Patel?
Do we know like our server didn't have any issue because sometimes it keeps in the cache and then after like when server comes online, it dumps all the response, it logs everything. So I'm going a little bit more in technical, but that happens too.
So if you can see the first column, they all have unique identifier numbers, right? So then you look at the timestamp and you'll see that they're all sort of in a time, and I'm sorry, the numbers are really, can you just focus on those column, that left-hand side of the,
You can expand that.
If I might add a comment, and Cynthia can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think staff is telling you they've done a definitive, technical analysis of this and are opining to you they know exactly what happened. What they are saying is based on appearances and consultations with folks who know better than us, certainly than me. The conclusion was reached that it appears likely that these are not all separate individual responses and that one or more people submitted multiple responses. It's not anything that we're investigating or that we even could, investigate to the nth degree. And so what I think you're seeing is the information that was gathered, presented to you, staff's analysis of kind of the risks and what things appeared, to have occurred with respect to the engineered, unregistered, submittals. And I also want to point out that there was nothing in the survey that said you couldn't provide multiple responses. And so we would like to have thought that that was implicit, right, as part of the fairness, of it. It wasn't prohibited, it wasn't encouraged, it wasn't expressly provided. Obviously, the intent was to gather as high-quality information, as was possible. So you're hearing from staff an assessment of what they, believe was likely to have happened and the difference between the unregistered and the registered, submittals and the quality of that. You can judge that, now for yourself, and you're evaluating what, if anything, to do and to factor in with the survey, data that's provided to you.
Thank you, Glenn. That was great. Just to add to it is that's why we didn't focus on the numbers as much as the reasons why people supported one position or other, because I think that's really going to help the committee understand the thinking of the community of why they would support a position, what are the concerns, why would they want to change, why would they want to keep it the same. And so we'd really try to focus on those reasonings and how that might support the thinking of this committee and your recommendations going forward.
Any other questions from the committee?
I appreciate, I mean, say this example is pretty good, as part of the discussion what we are going to have. Thank you so much. I appreciate the staff doing the wonderful job. Thanks.
Do we have any questions from the public? Yes, please come forward. Can you speak into the mic?
Oh, okay, green, okay. I thought red was on, like, Well, thank you very much, yes. So anyway, sorry about that. But the sample that was provided was very interesting because they were all yes, 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 yes. So you have the registered sample where people give their names, identify themselves, and it's like a 2-to-1 or 3-to-5, 3-to-2 against the proposals. And you have this small sample, albeit a small sample. I mean, conceivably other samples, there might be a disparity the other way, but I just found it interesting. I just wanted to kind of note for the record here that the small sample that we did see, it seemed like 90% of them were yeses, that were all close in time and so forth. So that's the only thing I wanted to note. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members from the public would like to speak? Are there any members online?
Yes, we have Leslie Mukuyama.
Go ahead, Wesley.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
I agree with what the man said. Is we don't know what the full sample was, but it did seem like from that little sample you had, overwhelmingly you said yes, we should change. My question is, if the charter committee and the city council, I'm going to ask the attorney to vote to put it on the ballot, do people campaign for that, or and how do they, how do they inform the electorate of the both sides, and how do they inform the electorate, give an informed message to the electorate what they're voting for? I'd like to ask the city attorney or the other people on the staff, what would the process be?
City attorney, could you answer that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, would you like me to answer now, or do you want to go through all public comments, or?
You can answer now.
Okay, very good. Good, fair, appropriate question, and I can at least outline the structure of how it works as I understand it, and any number of people on staff, can chime in to see if I missed a key point of it. The way ballot measures like this work is when they are council initiated, as this one, would be, is that if in fact they decide to proceed by putting these measures on the ballot, they would deliberate on that. They would approve the form of the question, probably getting into the wording, in a little greater, detail. And they would also review and approve the text of the actual amendment. There's actually a variety of different provisions, within the charter itself that refer to elected, versus appointed, positions. And there's the provision that talk about the city manager's authority that would need to be revised, right, if in fact they proceed with what's currently, in front of you. And so what would be put together for the public is the ballot question, the actual revisions to the text of the charter itself, and a couple of other important elements that you're probably familiar with that you see when you get your ballot. The first of these is a argument in favor of the proposed measure, and that is typically, although it doesn't have to be, when it's a charter and when it's a city council initiated item produced by a member of the group that supported putting it on the ballot in the first place. So that would be drafted by a probably a council member, typically advocate for that position. And then there would be a process through the city clerk for people to propose that they be the group that writes the official opposition, to that measure. Then there's a back and forth, there's rebuttals, in both cases, and so when the item ultimately goes forward, it includes the ballot question, the proposed amendments to the text, the argument in favor, the argument against, and the rebuttals, back and forth. So that's kind of what goes into the ballot measure. In addition, and of course I think this is the most important part because I'm the author of it, there is also a city attorney's impartial analysis of what the measure is. That is a certain, I have a certain word limit that's always challenging because I want to be very fulsome in my description of things. Forget the number of words, is it 250 words, 500 words? Yeah, it's a certain number, never enough. So it's a test of my writing, prowess, where I am duty-bound to provide a description of what the measure proposes, what it changes, and other types of analysis so that people understand the context and the nature and the impacts, of what they're proposing. Unbiased, I'm not advocating, for it, so it's intended to be a neutral, informational matter, not arguments for or against. Those things go into those other pieces. And so that's what the kind of the package, if you will, of information that goes in front of the voters. Once the city council takes action to put an item on the ballot, at that point, no public city resources can be spent advocating for the position or opposing, the position. And so what people out in the public, might choose to do, in normal, campaigns like this is up to people in the public, either individuals or groups that might rally in either in support of whatever's proposed or against what's proposed. But city resources cannot be spent on that. It would be unlawful. It would be an unlawful campaign, in effect, use of city resources. The city can provide and frequently does provide information to people, right? There could be something on the website, right, that includes all the arguments and the things against, and there typically would be. And in addition, individual council people could, with their own resources, and on their own time, campaign for or against. And so all those things can happen. So that is kind of the universe of how the measure is put together, what's presented, to the public, and how public resources either are or are not, spent on communicating what the measure does to the public. So I think that probably maybe longer-winded than you'd want answers the question, but hopefully gives you a good idea of what the process would be going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Follow-up question. May I ask a follow-up question? So you're going to do all of this. Will you have it in Spanish and Asian languages, since a majority of people are people of color? Will you put that out? And will you have, I know with Measure A and Measure C, they had pamphlets distributed. The city paid for that. So was that illegal, or was, and is it legal for this, for the city council to issue pamphlets and also have verbal, because people don't always read everything? Will there be some verbal kinds of things going out, educating the public, both sides, I'm saying, very unbiased, to understand what this ballot will be?
Mr.
That's
Chair,
my
Mr. Chair, I'll take the second part of the question. We do try and do, as the city attorney indicated, provide informational materials to the voters to say what's on the ballot, what they can expect to put on their ballot. In terms of the language abilities, I'm going to have the city clerk respond to that question.
Thank you. Assistant City Clerk Nora Pimentel. In response, Wesley, to your question, the city does, so there's legal postings that's required, and so we do that, and we do also post in the various languages that the county also publishes for the languages within this county.
Okay, thank you. So pamphlets can be distributed. Okay, thank you. At the city's expense, right?
The city clerk's office doesn't distribute pamphlets. We just do the translation through a venue for the arguments, the rebuttals, and the impartial analysis.
Well, how would that venue be made? Because I remember Measure A and C had pamphlets that were distributed all over the city.
There are committees that can be established of outside groups who may wish to lobby on behalf, but that it would not be a city-sponsored publication.
Well, that's strange to me, because I do know the city sponsored those measures.
Mr. Chair, back to you. I don't know that we have any comments on other things that went on or that's even kind of in front of you today. Tried to outline for you what the process would be going forward, and so back to you, Mr. Chair.
Are there any other comments online? Are there?
Sorry, we just had a hand raised. Shalini Venkatesh.
Go ahead, please.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I think there can be reasons that some people might have gone on and given their opinions unregistered, apart from trying to game the system, as you said. I myself did fill out the survey and I did register and gave my name, but I have to admit, I thought about it for quite a while. I filled out all my questions and then I sat with it and thought, am I going to be okay with having this very publicly on a website? And I think, and I decided to go ahead and do it anyway. But I wouldn't be surprised if, there were people who thought about it and just said, I want to give my opinion, but I'm actually nervous about doing this. In particular, some of the meetings that I watched online early on, people got pretty emotional and quite personal on, both sides of the issue. And I think that could well put people off. And so I don't really know. I mean, I don't have an answer to this. Obviously, it did make it easy for people who did want to cheat, that they could fill out surveys without putting their name. But I think it puts the committee in a really difficult position now, because you're feeling that you can't really trust the unregistered responses very well, because a lot of them might be fakes. And then you're also stuck with the registered voters being such an extremely small sample. So I feel the whole survey was is not really giving you very valuable information. I'm not quite sure what the answer to that is, unless in the future, in similar situations, you just require everybody to register to share their opinion, and then work hard on trying to encourage a lot of people to do it in spite of that. Anyway, I just was afraid that the community might think that they should just dismiss all the unregistered voters' opinions because they're doubtful about them. Because I think at least some fraction of those are people who are legitimately in the city and have views, but were just reluctant to come out too visibly. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments online?
And
I have another comment. Should we close the public hearing and then have comments from the committee? Because that's how this is scheduled. I'll just make my...
It's not really a public hearing. You're taking
Okay.
public comment.
So my other comments are, and again, I apologize if I'm getting into the weeds.
Chair,
But-
I believe we have somebody who just signed it.
Okay. So the 3 cities that you use as examples, those are all general law cities. And I like how their ballot questions are brief, simple, and to the point. And I'd like to see that on ours as well. And so my question is, our ballot question mentions amending the charter. But isn't that a given? And couldn't we put that in the text to simplify the question? Or is there a law that requires the question to contain the fact that the charter will be amended?
I'm going to defer to the city attorney.
I'll look at the legal requirement for that. But my comment, just as a matter of wording, is I don't think it's a given. I think it's, from my standpoint, and the council will ultimately decide the final wording, assuming it's not legally required. It makes it clear to the people what it is they're actually doing. So the idea that you're amending the charter, or you're adopting an ordinance, or you're doing something else, for me is an important part of the communication. But whether or not it's legally required or not, I actually don't know the answer to that. Maybe my more knowledgeable than me assistant might.
I also can't say for certain, but for the most part, I do think it does make it clear to the voter that they're amending the city charter, right? And so we will review that, and then we can bring that back to the full council.
In these general law cities, they're kind of amending something as well, right? What are they amending? They're amending their ordinance?
I haven't reviewed any of those cities' provisions, but a lot of times they are in their ordinances if
Right.
they don't have a charter. And sometimes if they don't even mention an ordinance, but they've in practice have been an elected city clerk, they're just taking a formal action to move from elected to appointed. So, yeah.
And that's what they did in these situations. They were previously elected and they moved to be appointed.
Yeah, and sometimes, and I don't know what was done here, honestly, I have not looked at these either. Sometimes cities take the pulse of their public without actually have it being something that's binding, right? What do you think, public? And then the city council actually has the authority to decide. That's one of the reasons why, for me, communicating in the ballot language that you're actually amending the charter, it's a real thing, right? You're being asked to change a law that you as a citizen have a right to decide. And so for me, that's informative. These, for me, I get the idea of a brief, straightforward question. There's definitely some value in that. But we typically recommend that you strike a balance of making sure you're communicating fully what's really being proposed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have. Are there any other comments? Yes, Member Chandra?
Yeah, this question is for City Attorney. Glenn, so you said that to be on the ballot, right? So given there 30,000 is the voters within the city, what would be the cost for that one? Last time we had a discussion, but with your experience, can I know approximate cost of this if it is going to come in the first quarter of 2024 or early second quarter?
I appreciate your sense that I might know all these things. I absolutely do not know the answer to this, although I think you got previous information, and I think Assistant City Manager and/or City Clerk have some good info for you on that.
We did provide that information to the committee beforehand. It is a separate cost in March because it is a special election, and it would be in November. However, keep in mind that if it passes in March, there is no cost in November because there wouldn't be another election. So we can pull up the actual, I believe it's 462. Yeah, I believe it was like 462 for the special election in March.
462K?
Correct, for a special election in March, that would include the multiple amendments, but we'll have to confirm it and look it up.
Any other comments from the committee? Member Sini?
I just wanted to be, the last other recommendations, are we discussing that later? Other recommendation related to the committee's work, is that a separate item? Or is that included in this item?
I'm sorry, this one here?
Yeah.
I think that means like,
It would be included in this discussion, so we do need you to take action on, we'll need to take action on the final recommendations. We'll need to have some discussion around how the committee wants to participate. Ideally, all the committees would attend the meeting on November 7th, and the committee could present their recommendations. Are you able to find it? If I can go back to Member Chandra's question. We'll come back with a question, we're looking it up, but we're trying to then now find the answer to your question, or get the recommendation slide up. Can you put the recommendation slide up, please? So these are the actions, again, that we need the committee to take tonight. We need to have you finalize the draft ballot measure language that you would, for city clerk and for city chief of police, that you would like to forward to the city council. We'd like your recommendations for appointing authority for each position, and then any other recommendations the committee would like to forward that's within the scope of your work, including the role of the committee and who should be presenting the recommendations and findings to the city clerk on November 7th. So all of that is action that we need to take tonight. And Member Chandra, would it be okay if we gave you the cost information after the meeting? Do you need that now?
It would be better if we can have now, but I'm okay with that. Once the discussion comes in, we can talk about that also. Thank you.
So the other recommendation, or the other thing that I wanted to clarify was that of all the presentations that we had from the public, one of the ones that I found very informative was the continued request from different people that we have a commission in the city for the police chief position, that there be a citizens committee for the police chief, or I think Teresa O'Neill talked about an ombudsman position. People had different names for it, but that was a continuing thread through many of the people talking, that they wanted to have something where they could, as citizens, come forward. And that was part of why they were in favor of having an appointed police chief so that they could be able to escalate issues within the city, and that they didn't feel that that was happening. I just wanted to somehow flag that as a issue as it goes to the city council, that, you know, perhaps they have a group do a police advisory board or an ombudsman or a police auditor. You know, we have Ladoris Cordell in the county of Santa Clara who has just done incredible work along these lines. So it's not a new idea in policing. And I worked back in the early 90s on the vision of what Santa Clara was going to be in 2020. And we were going to be a city of community policing. And we were going to have people on bicycles, and or as we built our walking communities, and our police officers and bicycles. And, you know, it was going to be a more close, involved community activity with our police force. And, you know, we have our coffee with the police now, and, you know, we've done different things over the years, but I think that if the city council would think about what it is that the people are asking for and try to have something for the city manager to think about to bring forward to the community that would allow for the citizens to be able to feel like they can talk about, to Member Davis's issue about people being afraid to talk because nothing gets escalated, that it would be beneficial. It was just a theme, and I just don't want it to get lost while we do the wording and all of the stuff that needs to happen. I just thought that was a really important issue. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if just a matter of process, perhaps it would be best for us to go back to the voting to confirm the ballot, the position, the recommendations for each position, and we'll do that first, and then we can go to the recommendations for the authority, and then any other recommendations. If we stay in order, I think that might be best. So if we can pass out the ballots for the, let's do the city clerk first, please. So as we do that, the answer to Member Chandra's question, how much does it cost to have the chief and clerk on the ballot? In other words, the estimated cost for a special election that includes up to 2 measures is $362,000 in costs for the Register of Voters, plus approximately $60,000 to $70,000 for city costs related to printing, translations, publication of notices, and other related costs, for a total of approximately $400,000 to $32,000. And that is can be found in RTC 23-1156 that is on the city's website. Okay, so again, if each member can indicate their preference, the clerk will take up the ballots. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the ballot for the clerk.
Okay, so this is for city clerk position. Should the position of city clerk be elected or should be appointed? Committee Member Davis, appointed. Committee Member Patel, appointed. Committee Member Coulterman, appointed. Committee Member Hui, sorry, Hui, thank you, appointed. Committee Member Houston, appointed. Committee Member Sini, appointed. And Committee Member Chandra, elected. That's 6-1. Appointed.
Okay, so we're going to repeat the same process now for the chief of police. So this is the vote for whether or not to recommend the chief of police be appointed or elected. And again, just for those who may have watched last time, and again, last time was the preliminary, and today will be the final recommendation.
So this is for Chief of Police position decision. Should it be elected or appointed? Committee Member Chandra, elected. Committee Member Patel, appointed. Committee Member Coltman, appointed. Committee Member Huynh, appointed. Committee Member Houston, appointed. Committee Member Sini, appointed. Committee Member Davis, elected. So that looks like it's 2-5. 2 elected, 5 appointed.
So now the question is on the appointing authority for the city clerk.
If appointed, should the appointing authority be city council or city manager for the city clerk position? Committee Member Davis, appointing authority, city manager. Committee Member Sini, appointing authority, city manager. Committee Member Houston, appointing authority, city manager. Committee Member Huynh, appointing authority, city manager. Committee Member Colterman, appointing authority, city manager. Committee Member Patel, appointing authority, city manager. And Committee Member Chandra, appointing authority, city manager. That's unanimous, 7-0.
Okay, now it's the appointing authority for the chief of police.
Chief of Police position, if appointed, should the appointing authority be the City Council or City Manager? Committee Member Davis, appointing authority, City Manager. Committee Member Sini, appointing authority, City Manager. Committee Member Houston, appointing authority, City Manager. Committee Member Huynh, appointing authority, City Manager. Committee Member Coulterman, appointing authority, City Manager. Committee Member Patel, appointing authority, City Manager. And Committee Member Chandra, appointing authority, City Manager. That's a unanimous, 7-0, appointing authority, City Manager.
Okay, at this point, you do have draft ballot language in the report, and what we'd like to do is get feedback from the committee as to whether or not you're comfortable with that language, or you have any suggestions. For example, the chair indicated that he would like to see it be brief and concise to the extent possible. Is there any other feedback that you would have on the draft ballot language?
And Mr. Chair, while the group can certainly take a formal action on this, even feedback would be useful, right, to staff. Ultimately, the City Council will decide how to proceed and what the language will be.
Are there any comments or questions from the committee on the ballot language?
Okay, so right now it's only the ballot statement we're looking at because we don't have the full text of what the charter change would look like.
That's correct. It's just the ballot question itself, what was presented to you. Yeah, the language itself is something that our office would develop working, with staff that would, as I described in my long-winded description of the overall process, be presented to the City Council for their consideration and action, and would be very much part of the materials that were presented to the voters. But this is just the question. That's as far as we've gotten, the ballot question.
So if we could take the city clerk first and get feedback on the city clerk question, and then the second question for the chief of police.
Any comments or questions?
Can we, in the spirit of simplifying things, can we just merge this into just one question?
We could, I suppose. Are you saying one item on the ballot for both, that would, the statement would be for both chief and clerk?
Yes, I'm asking about that possibility.
It's possible. I would suggest that we don't do that, and I would suggest that we have two statements, and the reason is somebody might want the clerk to be appointed, but not the chief, and we want to give them that choice. Any other questions or comments from the member Coulterman?
Yeah, I agree with the chair. They should remain two separate questions. In addition, there's going to be some different parts of the ballot language for the clerk versus the police chief that would need to be modified. And I think we should keep them as two separate ballot measures to give people the opportunity to make a decision on each one.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Member Chandra?
So this is Chair. So we are already decided to go with the ballot. That's where is the conclusion we are coming through, or because here is my thought process, right? We haven't seen the full results of the survey, which is yet to come tomorrow. We would like to see, all the columns. That's what we are going to provide. Everyone made a decision that, say the majority to go as appointed for the clerk and the chief?
Well, I think we have seen the results from the survey, and I think staff did a fine job of summarizing it. To me, what's most important that we have from the survey, and it is final, is the reasons that people put. There are good reasons on both sides, and that's final. To me, that carries more weight than how many people responded. But as far as how many people responded, that is final as well. And we know that a large number of responses were anonymous, and it appears more likely than not that one or more people submitted many responses to make up that 5,000 number. That information is final. What information do you feel
Well,
is still lacking?
so I feel that all the unregistered might be rigged. You don't know, because if you see the timestamp of one of the example, right? So irrespective of whether just that the pattern which has been shown on the screen, right? There have been 7 to 10 columns, and all the columns for each and every one chosen was similar. The only unique was the survey ID. So if you tend to see the data for all the 5,000 response, so you know that all the unregistered users might be rigged. And I think it's unfair to go with counting the unregistered users also as part of the tally and making a decision. That's what I would suggest. Thank you.
So, Member Chandra, what I hear, correct me, please, did I hear you say that we shouldn't consider those multiple unregistered responses that appear to be many from one or more people? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. If I would have to take a vote, I think, well, here is the two things, right? One is registered voters. You have the survey, which is limited to 250, less than 250 odd, respondents. But the unregistered is 5,500, which is overwhelmingly well. But you cannot count unregistered users as part of our decision making, because the data is false. I mean, say today in this world, you can cook up the data. And I would caution that, don't take unregistered voters as part of your decision making. Rather than that, you can look at other dynamics of the people's response and other things. So I'm just letting you know. Thank you.
Member Chandra, thank you for that. That's a reasonable conclusion. I can see how you came to that conclusion. And I'm pretty confident that you're not the only committee member who sees it that way. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? Member Davis?
Member Chandra, we did this vote before the results came out of the test. So I think it was clear then how the committee was going to vote.
Are there any other constructive comments and questions from the committee? Member Sini?
Well, I'm not sure if it's constructive, but I would just say that the nature of surveys is that they're like spice. They give you a flavor of something, but they don't give you an answer. And I did metrics, I did surveys throughout my career in high tech, and so I take them with a grain of salt, which is why I use the analogy of spice. But they're helpful in that they bring out, they're not like voting, It's not like when you register to vote, you have to take your ID in, you have to do all kinds of things to make it legal and authorized. And when you're doing surveys, it's getting a sense of something, it's getting a feel for something. And you have to recognize that, yes, there are people that are savvy and do game the system, and that's part of what comes with the territory. And it's just, it doesn't give us answers. It gives us a flavor of what the community cares about and is thinking.
Well, I totally agree, ma'am. But one thing is, the multiple responses is a big flaw. The multiple responses from one user or, maybe a bunch of users, the way I have seen the pattern, it's a big flaw. So we could have, maybe we would have used IP address or some way to track, to make it unique. If that would have been there, covering an unregistered without their name, that's fine. But that's big no for me, because even though if you take multiple surveys available everywhere in the IT world or other places, they take the IP address or some way they identify the uniqueness of each and every survey, either related to the email address or related to the IP address. So if both are not there, then I think it's totally flawed. So that's what is my conclusion.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? Member Nguyen, did you have a comment?
Yes, well, I would like to build on Committee Member Sini's, build on Committee Members Sini comment along with one of the public comments. We definitely, we're currently facing a bit of a catch-22 with both the registered and unregistered responses, as pointed out by one of our public commenters. The registered ones are too small a sample size to be representative. And in statistics, the smaller the sample size, the less representative and less trustworthy that sample size is. But as for the unregistered, there is the issue that has been brought up about verification. But we also must remember that within the considering that the bigger the sample size, the more representative it tends to be, and as the sample size is bigger, so the biases of each response not individual, gets canceled out.
Thank you, Member Nguyen. Are there any other comments or questions from the committee? I wanted to make a clarification. At our last meeting, we did this vote process, and it was preliminary. And I said more than once, clearly, that when we got here tonight, after we saw the results of the survey, we would have the prerogative to change our vote. And at least one of us did. I had an open mind throughout this whole process. And I know, or I hope, everybody on this committee had an open mind. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, just a reminder, the outstanding item is to identify the role the committee would like to play in terms of presenting their findings to, or the recommendations to the City Council on November 7th. So, again, ideally, we would love for everyone to attend that meeting, just so that we can acknowledge your work and thank you for your service. But more importantly, so that the council can also hear from you. And so I think ordinarily the chair would make the official recommendations, but if the other committee's members would like to speak, particularly those who might have a different opinion, we're also open to that. We just want to make sure that there's a fair and impartial presentation of the committee's works and findings.
I'm happy to be there and make the presentation if that's what you want, if that's what the committee wants, and I'm open to other ideas as well. And if there are other members who want to speak, I think that would be okay.
I think what council really needs to hear is the thinking that's gone behind the committee's decision, right? We know the official findings or the recommendation of the committee, but each of you have indicated your own way of thinking or support for the positions, and I think that would be helpful for council to hear as well.
I have a question. So some of the individuals that I spoke with in my area, particularly around the chief of police, had some strong feelings. And I hope they voted or they took the survey. But when will the opportunity come for some of the particulars, such as if it is going to be an appointed position, could there be then that opening up of the greater Santa Clara area so that we could look at more diversity? Because that's just not inherent in saying, oh, we're going to have it open. So they wanted to know those kinds of things, and I don't hold the answer to that, in that I will try to put that in there, but where is that opportunity to talk about what some of the people that we spoke with may have wanted? You see, we didn't talk together as a committee. We listened to information. We got information from the public. There was mixed points of view. We get the survey. I don't know how valid I feel about it on either side of it, but I guess I'd lean more to if people identified themselves, and I could speak to that more, but as Member Nguyen said, it's a small sample, so that might be nixed out too. So I don't exactly know where the checks and balances and how we feel and what we came up with as a committee. I don't know what that is, other than we took a vote. We sat here, we listened to people, we took a vote, and it is what it is, and so it will be presented as such when do these other things get to come in to play.
If I can, I think that's the intent of the last bullet on the slide. Any other recommendations related to the committee's work and study? So if there's feedback, now would be the appropriate time for the committee to have that discussion.
So, do I understand you correctly that you want the opportunity to appoint from a wider region than just Santa Clara?
And I could be wrong, but I think what I was hearing was that the person, for chief of police anyway, I'll stick with that one, currently needs to reside in the city of Santa Clara. I'll just stay with that just there. And part of the concern was the lack of diversity and equity because of the small, sample that we could have in Santa Clara and not bringing other people in. So I was asked the question, can that be changed in it? Like, if it's going to be an appointed position, can people be, is it still going to be just the people who reside in Santa Clara? Or could it be changed to, you open it up to, other people of the county or whatever it would be?
Can I answer that?
Yes, you want to take a stab at it?
So normally positions that are appointed by the city manager, we do an open competitive process, and we go through, we post the job posting, we do a recruitment, we evaluate it, and we try our best to have diversity throughout the human resources process. So there is not a residency requirement in the appointed positions generally. I don't know that if there's an exception. I'd have to check to see if there's any exception. But in general, there is no residency requirement for appointed positions that are appointed by the city manager.
So my question is that how it's going to be? Because we also here said that we wanted it to be the city manager, but it doesn't mean that the city council is going to feel that way. And could they in fact say, no, we're going to have this, and if the people want us to appoint, we want to appoint. So does it remain the same, those rules?
So the council has the ultimate authority, you're correct. However, they have asked you for your recommendation on what the appointing authority would be. So the recommendation that would come from this committee would be that the positions be appointed and under the appointing authority of the city manager.
Mr. Chair, and if I might add just to
yes, please,
more directly to your response, if people that you're speaking to or you have a concern about whatever process is chosen, that it makes sure it's inclusive, and solicit, diverse applications, that's certainly something that anyone could go to the council, even on November 7th and talk to them about. It wouldn't necessarily be built into the measure itself. As Assistant City Manager pointed out, typically with the city manager appointment, there's a process for that would be developed and would have to be developed somewhat anew, right? If this measure got passed and they'd be hiring a position, right, for the first time in many decades that they hadn't hired before. But if that was something that the community was concerned about, in the context of it converting from, from an elected to an appointed position, that would totally be in order to present to the council on November 7th. They might not do anything with it then, but it might be something that they would subsequently communicate if the measure got passed to the city manager as to what kind of thing they were looking for.
And again, if that's the will of the committee, right, we would especially like to know that. So if the committee wants to pass that on as one of your recommendations, that the council try to ensure that the appointment process is inclusive and diverse as possible.
Are there any other questions of Member Chandra?
Yeah, so on November 7th, right, the chair is going to talk, but is there a provision for an antagonist like me to talk, or it's just whoever makes the, majority here, they will speak? I was not clear what you said, so.
So that's at the discretion of the committee. In general, it is normally the chair who will make the recommendation on behalf of the committee. It's up to the committee to decide whether you'd like to have other folks speak at the committee. Again, we would encourage you to be at the meeting, again, to thank you and recognize you, and to share your thoughts. I do think it's important that the committee, the council hear from you, but the official recommendation from the committee would come from normally the chair, but the committee has to approve that.
Are there any other questions or comments? City Attorney, did you have a
I'm
comment?
sorry, just to maybe add a comment for some clarity on that. Everything Assistant City Manager said is true. You guys decide, how the standard, approach usually is the chair, but the committee can decide, right, by majority vote as to who will be, who will represent, if you will, the official recommendation of the committee to the council. It has occurred before, in my observation, that the non-prevailing view, could be, incorporated into what that, presentation would be, either by the chair or somebody else designated to present that. Even if this committee decided not to include that, any of you would reserve the right, as long as you make it clear you're not speaking for the committee itself, to present what your particular views were, on the process. And so even if the Commissioner, even if you were not formally incorporated into the presentation, the chair nor anybody else would suggest that you couldn't come and speak, your mind at that meeting as to what you thought. It's just you wouldn't be speaking on behalf of the committee itself. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to make that clarification.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Member Coulterman?
I just wanted to ask city staff, do you need us to have a motion to have the chair as our representative present the results of our work to the city council on November 7th? Is that what you're?
We do need an action from the committee on whoever you would like to designate.
Okay, so I make a motion that our chair, Jeff Houston, present the results of our committee's work to City Council on November 7th, 2023.
Second.
All right. So now we'll do a roll call vote. Member Davis?
Yes.
Member Sini? Chair Houston?
Yes.
Member Nguyen?
Yes.
Member Coulterman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Patel?
Yes.
Member Chandra?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Assistant City Manager, help me figure this out, please. So we just voted that I will present the prevailing view. But I also heard from committee members that somebody wants to present the non-prevailing view. So did I hear that correctly? Is there a member Patel, did you have a comment?
So I think you are right, but I think what I heard from city attorney is they can provide you a slide deck and you can present it too. So it's both the ways. Both options are open. So
Yes, and that's what I want to discuss. I want to discuss what the committee members who had the non-prevailing view what they would like to do.
So again, the two options would be you could provide comments to the chair, and he could address your comments in his comments, or you can choose to make the presentation yourselves.
I have a question. Isn't it true that if the matter comes before the city council, that any citizen can come forward and make a comment?
That's
So
correct.
basically, we don't have to do anything. If the chair gives the presentation, then any one of us can come up and support him or, right? I mean.
But we're not representing I heard the attorney say that we're not, if we were to do that, as these people are here to present, we would not be representing the committee. I don't know that that's necessary to do. As a citizen, you can say what you'd like. I think that's what you're saying, that anybody can.
If I could just clarify, so I think one of the things to consider is if you come as an individual, you are limited to the 2-minute time limit. 2 minutes? If you come as part of the committee, then you're not timed, right? So there's no time limit on that. So there's something to consider.
Member Patel?
So isn't it like, I mean, we supposed to present only what committee has passed to the city council, not the other way around, right? So I just want to understand like why we want to like, I mean, because I don't want like, I mean, city council meeting on November 7th becomes like another discussion meeting. So I think like, I mean, whatever is being kind of recommended by the committee, that's what we should be presenting only. And of course, like, I mean, if anyone wants to share their opinion, they can definitely do that as a part of general rule by the city.
Member Nguyen?
Yes, I think to maybe further clarify things, to phrase it in more familiar, or rather more national terms, using the comparison or allegory of the Supreme Court. So as I recall, it's tradition in the Supreme Court that the Chief Justice delivers the majority opinion if the Chief Justice rules with the majority. And so using this allegory, Chair Houston as the chair and Chief Justice, since he will be representing the official court / committee's opinion / findings, and then each committee member is free to either do a concurrence or a dissent.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Are there any other comments or questions from the committee? Member Chandra?
Yeah, so this is for the staff and the city attorney, right? So if we get an opportunity to talk as an individual, that's fine. Appreciate it. As a committee, if we don't, if we are talking non-prevalent or past things, I would like to leave the committee right away. Is that okay with you all?
I didn't understand those last couple sentences.
So because it's already the decision already made, right? I mean, say the drafting ballot position for city clerk, chief of police, and the recommendations already, the majority decision is based on appointed. I've been voting on being elected. Since that most of them is already made a decision, I don't have any say right now. So I would like to leave the position right now and maybe come back as an independent entity on November 7th. Is that okay?
It's okay with me, and I think, just to be clear, the difference of you speaking as not a committee member is you're limited to the 2-minute time limit, but if you speak as a committee member, there is no limit, and I want you to have that opportunity, but if you prefer to speak as a general member of the public and not a committee member, you don't have to ask my permission. I'm giving you permission to do either what to do whatever you want. So I'm okay with whatever you want to do.
So I appreciate Houston, but they made a recommendation that only one person can speak on behalf of the committee. That's the decision, so.
Well, I think what staff is advising is the prevailing view, what we voted on tonight, will be presented by the chair. The non-prevailing view could be presented by committee members that were part of that non-prevailing view. So, or you could do it as a citizen without connection to the committee. So it sounds like what I'm hearing is, and so we can wrap this up, sounds like what I'm hearing, are there any other committee member comments? Okay, good. Sounds like what I'm hearing is the committee wants the chair to present the prevailing view, and any committee member that wants to say something else would say it as a citizen under the 2-minute time limit. Is that correct? Anybody disagree with that? Okay, good.
Mr.
So-
Chair, if I might add, obviously it's within your prerogative because you're going to be describing more than just the prevailing, view, right? To solicit input from the non-prevailing, side and incorporate their thoughts into your remarks. So that's within your prerogative as to how you want to present it, but that would also be a typical, responsibility of the chair. And then everybody, as we've all pointed out, using different terms and ways of describing it, could certainly speak as a citizen as well, but just not officially on behalf of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. Member Sini?
Thank you. Can we leave that open so that it could be decided later at the time of the meeting? I mean, does this particular question need to be answered right this minute tonight?
We do need formal action from the committee, but if you've already made the determination that the chair is going to make the presentation, the prevailing wage, so that would be the official action of the body. You cannot take official action outside of this meeting.
And this is our last meeting.
And this is our last meeting. And if I can, I appreciate Member Davis providing feedback on other issues that you want to consider other than the just 2 recommendations. You may want to poll the rest of the members to see if there's anything else they'd like communicated in your recommendations, along with the recommendation to have an appointed city clerk by the city manager and an appointed chief of police by the city manager. Are there any other considerations that you would like to make note?
Member Sini?
I would just say what I spoke about before regarding the highlighting the commentary from the people. If you would look at the comments that I made earlier, I'm not going to make them over again, regarding a citizens advisory committee or a police commission or something like that, that was brought up. An ombudsman, I think, was one of the terms that Teresa O'Neill used.
Thank you. Are there any other points that, Member Colterman?
I was just wondering who in the committee is planning on or is able to come on the 7th to stand with Chair Houston when he makes his presentation. I know I can come. And also, can staff give us an idea, like where in the meeting? Some of the times those meetings are very long. Where in the meeting are we going to land in terms of this presentation, in terms of our own planning to be here?
I wish I could. We will do our best to have it be the first item under public business, but that's about the best I can try to do. But, actually, no, I can. I can do better than that, because this is going to be the only item on that, only general business item on that particular agenda. We did make that happen. I'm sorry. We can do that. I can do better.
Are there any other comments or questions from the committee?
No, I just thought might be nice for planning if they knew how many of us are coming, and Chair Houston knew how many of us are planning on coming.
Well, I'd like to see all of you there, but I know sometimes you have other commitments, but it would be really nice if we could all be there together.
I plan on being there.
Assistant City Manager, is there more to do in this last item of other recommendations?
I believe that completes all the items. Thank you.
And we can move on to our next agenda item? Okay. Our final agenda item is a city staff report. Does staff have a verbal report? Assistant City Manager Bojarquez will provide a verbal report.
Actually, the city attorney has asked to speak.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, and anybody in the public listening, I've been trying to use opportunities where I'm appearing at different boards and commission meetings to advertise a presentation that I'm going to be giving to the, I hope, a convened meeting of the special counsel and interested members of the public and boards and commission members on open government and ethics. It is a requirement, as some of you know, under AB 1234, that elected public officials, certain boards and commission members entitled to reimbursement, and in a lot of cases, other senior officials receive, within a year of them taking their positions, and then every 2 years thereafter, training in open government and ethics. The curriculum for this includes Brown Act, the Public Records Act, conflict of interest laws, gift limitations and disclosure requirements, due process, a variety of other, to me, very interesting topics, not always to everybody else, but really all relating to kind of the rules under state and local law that determine the manner in which public officials need to conduct themselves. It is again, it's going to be on October 26th. It's a long presentation, much longer than the one you can take online in order to meet your qualifications, but it's interactive. It's got a lot of practice tips, to it, to folks who have those kind of positions. It will have an intermission where food will be served. I'm going to try to make it fun, with some quizzes on non, ethics, topics kind of peppered throughout the presentation. And while it's not oriented towards, public, input, it's really a training, right, for the people that are there. We will try to take, public questions, and I'm going to stay even after the meeting's over as long as I need to in order to try to answer as many of the public, questions that they have. So I would encourage this group, obviously, if folks interested in government, and good government, I think, to attend. If you could RSVP so that we know how much pizza and cookies and drinks, to get, and to be able to configure the room in a way that will accommodate everybody. I think we already have 50 RSVPs, so that should be a decent crowd. It will be streamed and recorded. But there will not be an opportunity for public input, right, coming, that direction. You'll have to be, present in order to do that. So, sorry, longer than maybe you wanted to hear from me, but I wanted to shout out for myself and my staff, who's going to be helping. Liz is going to be helping, and Nora will have a cameo, at least in presenting on some Form 700 disclosure, issues. If you're just interested in those topics, or you're a AB 1234, certificate person, or otherwise want to see me hold forth for 3+ hours on a Thursday night, I would encourage you all to attend. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'll try to be there.
Mr. Chair, if I can, this is our last meeting, so I do want to take the opportunity to thank the committee for your service. It's been a very, I know it's a sensitive issue, but everybody's been very respectful, very productive meetings. The individuals who have come out have all been patient and listened to the differences of opinions, and really want to appreciate everybody for that service. I also would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the amazing staff that we have who have made these meetings happen. The clerk's office, both Nora and Michelle, the city attorney's office, both Glenn and Liz, our fabulous communications team who are sitting in the back making sure that the streaming gets and the information got on the website. And please join me in thanking Fiona, who has managed to be the organizer of all the materials, all the information. She's done a fabulous job, so thank you. And we look forward to seeing you on November 7th. Just as a point of order, the presentation will be on November 7th. Should council decide to move forward, they would consider that action on November 14th. Okay.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Almost.
Okay.
Our meeting is now coming to an end. I sincerely thank everyone for coming tonight and for their participation and engagement during these 5 2023 Charter Review Committee meetings. At the November 7th, 2023 City Council meeting, a representative from this committee will communicate recommendations to the City Council related to the elected positions of Chief of Police and City Clerk. On November 14th, 2023, the City Council will discuss and take action on a resolution determining whether or not it will call for a consolidated special election on March 5th, 2024, to consider potential changes to the elected positions of Chief of Police and City Clerk. Committee members, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Committee Member Coulterman, thank you for your motion. Committee Member Nguyen, thank you for the second. If we have no objections to this motion, I will now adjourn this meeting at 8:56 p.m. Thank you.